You are listening to the Food Means Business podcast, which features the personal stories and secret ingredients behind what it's like to abandon your day job to start a CPG food and beverage business. I'm Janaba Johnson-Jones, former marketing executive turned entrepreneur and founder of food business incubator Hudson Kitchen. Join our community of fellow food business owners and subject matter experts to learn and laugh with us as we explore a startup world that's a little more culinary and a lot less corporate these days. So Leslie, welcome to the Food Means Business podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. Before we jump in and talk about your business, I'd love to hear about your trajectory. How'd you go from corporate to working in your own business?
Oh my goodness. It's been a long, winding journey that I could have never predicted, which I'm sure you probably hear from everyone. But I really wanted to be an entrepreneur as far back as I can remember. Like my mom tells me stories when I was 7. I wrote a little book, like colored a book, and I borrowed money from her to make copies of it. And then I sold it in the corner. And then in college, I was in a group called the Chicago Entrepreneurial Society. Actually met my husband there. We talked about like being entrepreneurs and everything. And then I think somehow in my head, I got the idea that I needed to get all of this experience and do all of these things first. And that kind of set me down a path of like a more traditional career. So I worked for a while in finance. I went to business school. I went into consulting, which kind of funneled off a lot of my business school classmates. And at the time, they were saying, do this and you'll learn so much and then you'll have even better, opportunity doing whatever you want to do next. And it was a great experience, but it's kind of like the years went by. And I ultimately had left consulting. I was working in the beverage industry, alcoholic beverages, for about 4 years. And I had this nagging thought in the back of my head. I still thought, I really want to start a company someday. And we actually saw a lot of research coming through when I was at that company about health and wellness trends, nutrition dense, foods and beverages, uh, just different messages pointing to what the consumer wanted around healthier, clean, convenient options. And I knew we were never going to do anything at this alcohol company with that information. I actually started a slide on my computer and I started writing this down. Somebody should do this. Here's a good idea. Somebody should do that. That was probably like 2017. So like 3 years before I actually ended up starting the company. And ultimately what made me do it was I had moved into hospitality right before COVID and I got laid off. So I got laid off with kind of looking around for a job. No one was hiring. Everything was kind of thrown off the usual routine, which kept me in busy mode. And it all kind of like bubbled back up. I've always wanted to do this, here's my chance. And so I finally decided to just give it a go.
That's amazing. So I read that you had a baby during that time also.
Oh, yes, that's true too. I know. It's funny. I actually think when I look back, I think COVID threw me so out of my normal routine that it resulted in a whole bunch of different changes.
Yeah.
But I had 3 boys in the city. We lived in like one of those tall, skinny, like high-rise type of places.
Okay.
We're all crammed in there. And I'd always wanted to have a 4th kid. And my husband was like, no way. So we're living the city life. It was busy. It was crazy. And then we ended up moving to the suburbs during COVID as well, to get away from some of the rioting and stuff that was happening at where our townhouse was. And I think when we moved to the suburbs, it was like, okay, we can actually see how we could possibly make this work now. We have more space and everything was more convenient. So that all sort of came at the same time. So I actually found out I was pregnant with my daughter basically while I was working on the formula for Vitaminis. And so I said to myself, okay, I have 9 months to get this product out the door before I could like take a little break with my baby. And so it was kind of like dual time at the same time. It's crazy.
So talk about that. So it's having like, you kind of had a tight timeline, which I think makes a lot of sense. I had another client that had kind of had the same thing happen to her. So I'm just wondering, like, how'd you get it all done and get the product launched?
Oh gosh. It's funny because you always look back and you think coulda, woulda, shoulda, And so when I look back, I actually think I could have spent a little bit more time in the sort of research thinking perfectionism phase before I launched the product. However, on the other hand, I think you could get stuck in that phase forever. So I think the deadline really pushed me to what I think of as 80-20 principle.
Yeah.
Like, what is the 80% answer that's going to make this work where I can get something out in the world and just get going with it? It really forced that process. So I spent some time in the very beginning ideating, and because I was self-funded, wasn't going to go like hire a company to give you a bunch of insights, like what I would have done in big corporate, right? It's like a $200,000 study or something.
Right.
So I just interviewed all my friends. I set up calls with them. I had an interview guide. I said, I know we're friends and we usually just chit chat, but I'm going to interview you. And I took notes and I asked questions about their nutrition and their challenges and what their preferences were. And I basically just did that for a few weeks while I was simultaneously kind of like ideating with a formulator, and it all sort of came together with the idea in the spring of 2021. And then it took me a good 3 to 6 months to find the co-packer who could do it
Yeah.
and actually do it.
And do it the way
So,
you wanted it done, right?
yes. Yeah. It was a bit of a capabilities thing. So Vitaminis are these little bottles,
Mhm.
which are kind of
So, yeah.
unique. And they're also shelf stable. So there's a lot of co-packers that do shelf stable, but mostly like 8 and 12 ounce bottles. And
Right.
a lot of co-packers that do shots, but refrigerated, like fresh pressed juice. And so finding that intersection I probably cold call maybe like 50 or 75 co-packers.
Oh my god. So talk about that process a little bit. I know it can be daunting, but how did you kind of land with the right one?
Oh gosh. So I started most of where I started on most areas where I didn't know what to do, which was a lot of areas. I did work in beverages, but I had never done anything exactly like this. So where I started for almost everything was in the community of other startup founders, because I found that if another startup founder recommended someone to me in any area, that meant that they were not only like good to work with, but also worth the money, got the results. Like I would never recommend somebody that I wasn't happy with. And so I knew any recommendations coming from that network were kind of like vetted already. And that's what I started with the co-packers. In this case, I'm part of the group Startup CPG,
Oh
which
yeah,
you
they're amazing. Yes.
yes, they were amazing, and they had a database of co-packers, and this was now, 2.5 years ago. I'm sure it's still floating around somewhere.
It is. Yeah, they are.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
started with that. It was a giant database, and you could filter it by capabilities. So, like, is it a juice? Is it a like whatever dry goods? And then once I had filtered that list, that's when I started cold calling. And a lot of it, you did have to have that conversation because on paper they may look good, but they don't tell you what their order minimums are, or maybe they don't even respond to you or whatever it is. So yeah, it just narrowed down. The one that I ended up with was actually a recommendation from my formulator. So it's funny. I went through this whole other process, but then ended up finding the one I went with through a different process.
Right.
So you never know.
True. It's true. So talk about the name Vitaminis. Like, where did that come from? How'd you come up with that?
Yes. So when I started the idea process, there was another woman that I had worked with at the alcohol company who had also left at that time, and she had left to start her own agency, like
Hmm.
branding marketing agency. But she was kind of like a solo person with a lot of different like connections, somebody that might do copywriting, somebody that might do this or that. So we worked together on the name. And there were quite a few processes with that. It was like it wasn't very structured, but it took a while
Yeah.
because I wanted something that was catchy and inspirational, but also self explanatory, which is just sort of a hard balance. Cause I remember some of the names in the beginning were very kind of high level, like wellness or like,
Hmm.
lifestyle. And I'm like, that sounds awesome, especially when you want to build a big platform. But like, what is it? Like, if someone was like, oh, have you tried wellness? It's like, what is that? Um, so I remember we went a lot of back and forth. And then the last stage is really pushing on like more descriptiveness. And somebody, not me, I did not come up with it. Somebody threw out vitamins and I was like, yes. And
That's
I was
it.
like, that's it. And then immediately I went and checked the trademark database and
Yes.
nobody had gotten it yet. So I was like, I gotta get it. So I did trademark Vitamini and Vitaminis.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, you definitely have to check the database, trademark database for sure, because I've known quite a few brands that have had to rebrand because of the cease and desist from another company. So
Oh boy.
that's definitely definitely crazy. So talk about the packaging. So it is like a shot. And as you mentioned, like they're typically refrigerated. Like how did you end up coming up with that type of packaging and what made you go with your logo? Give us the whole rundown of the logo and everything.
Yeah. Again, it's sort of a trial and error. Like I think it's easy to look at someone else's company and think they like had a genius idea that just happened. That's never how it works.
Right.
So I actually, coming from the drinks business previously in my prior life, I had kind of gravitated towards a beverage for a number of reasons, the convenience of it, the tastiness of it. I'm not a big fan of pills and gummies in my own like wellness life. And
Yeah.
so to me, like a liquid is the perfect vehicle. It's easily digestible, it's easy, convenient, tasty. Um, and depending on the format, you don't have to mix and measure, like all that kind of stuff. I knew it had to be easy and taste good. So it's kind of like in the world of beverages. And I did think about for a while doing a full size drink, but I was deterred away from it for a number of reasons. But the main one was this was during COVID and it had to be e-commerce friendly. There was no retail. So that's like one of those interesting things where if I'd done it at a different time, maybe I would have come up with a different thing. But I knew I had to start on e-commerce. And I thought, if you're shipping a package of 12 full size drinks, that's like $10 plus shipping and it's not gonna work.
Right.
So I just honestly, all of that just kind of led me. I think at one point my formulator was suggesting those powder packets, but that just didn't quite sit right with me in terms of being like really tasty and easy. Cause then you're
Hmm.
mixing, measuring, and there's something about it too with powders. It's like, what is in there? Is it natural? So I had this vision. So like a very natural juice with extra nutrients in it and just kind of went in that direction.
Amazing. So talk about your family a little bit. I know that your daughter had some health issues. So I'd love to
Yes.
how you dealt with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I got my kids right here, my little
Oh, they're
so
so
I had
cute.
3 boys, they were 18 months apart, so I had
Oh,
them.
wow.
I know. I was like one of those things where it's like, "Oh, yeah, they'll be close, they'll be great. Let's, like, get the diaper phase over with," like,
Yeah.
the logical explanations, and
Yeah.
then, "Oh, this is." Yeah, I had my 3 boys. When I started the company, they were 5, 6, and 7, or, like, 4, 6, and 7 or something. And they were all, like, healthy, never had any health issues, easy, natural births, like, nothing, like, very easy pregnancy, no nothing. So I think I was kinda spoiled in that sense. I was like, "Oh, this is just easy, just whatever." But you never know what life is throwing at you. It's the same
True.
thing. I never thought I would get laid off, for example. Like, "Oh, I didn't get laid off. That happens to other people." Well, guess what? Okay, everybody. But yeah, my daughter, so I when I found out I was pregnant, around the same time I was working on Vitaminis, I had a very healthy pregnancy, no issues. I did all the testing, I did all the vitamins, I did all the prenatal appointments. Nothing came up at all. And then when she was born in September, everything was normal, healthy, natural birth. Again, nothing except that
Mhm.
she failed her hearing screen. And because we have no hearing loss in our family at all, my husband and I are like, "Oh, that's weird." And the nurse even said, "Oh, it's probably just fluid in her ears. Like, don't think anything of it." So of course you're like,
Mm.
"Yeah, don't think anything of it." And so it actually took us out September, and then it actually took us about 2 months to get her final diagnosis that she was in fact deaf. So in November, we found out she was deaf. And by that point, I had enough clues. This is my fourth child. Like, you could drop a pan on the floor of the kitchen and she wouldn't wake
Mhm.
up from her nap.
Mhm.
So I was like, there's something here. But part of me wanted to believe she's just a good sleeper. But then I was like,
Right.
okay. And then we also noticed she had some delays with like holding her head up and kind of like this muscle strength things. So we found out she was deaf in November, and then they recommend some genetic testing when you have a deaf child. And that took months to get results back. But sometime in like February, March, we found out she has Usher syndrome. So it's a syndrome, it's a genetic syndrome where you're born deaf and you have some balance issues, which is some of her balance things. And then it comes with progressive eyesight loss over
Okay.
time. So most people with her condition will lose their eyesight to be legally blind by around age 10. So that was a crazy, crazy, I would have just never even thought anything like that. I never knew any blind people, never met any
Right.
people, didn't know what a cochlear implant was. And it's crazy because now she's 2 and we've come so far. Like, we know sign language, she's cochlear implant, she's speaking, she's doing all these therapies. But it's just funny. You never know what life's gonna throw at you. But
Yeah.
yeah, that has been quite the adventure.
That's amazing. I'm so happy that she is doing really well. So
Oh
that's
yeah.
really great. So
Yes.
talk about how you manage the business throughout all of that because we have these businesses, but then like life is happening at the same time. How are you balancing everything?
Yeah. I think for me, it kind of comes in waves. And I would say that goes with like how much time you have, how much energy you have, what your mental state is,
Mhm.
like there's times where you're able to just pour yourself into work and there's times where you're just not feeling it. And so what I am trying to do is, when I'm feeling really energized, I do try to pour myself in. It's like, here, I got to do this, and that might mean outsourcing a little bit more of child activities that I might like to do, but
Mhm.
I realize I need to focus on work or whatever it is. Or maybe it's like skipping more social events, and just focusing there. But then on the other times when I don't feel and it feels like a struggle and I don't know exactly what to do and I feel kind of drained, I really lean on sort of discipline where it's like,
Mhm.
okay, wake up and do at least a couple things. And then
Right.
if you need a break, take a break. Maybe do the social event, maybe go to the kids' game. So that's kind of how I try to think about it. I try not to like catastrophize, if I have a bad day or a bad week where things are too busy or I just can't, I don't feeling bummed about vitamin D's. I just try to like think, okay, well, I'm getting more stuff done on the family side. And then on times when maybe I feel like I've missed a lot of kids' activities and feeling the mom guilt, I think, well, I can lean into that later. At least I'm getting some progress here. So it's a constant back and forth and you never quite get it right. At least I
Right.
never feel like I'm
I
getting it
hear
right.
you. No, I never get it right. My kids are older, but I still don't feel like I'm getting it right.
Just do the best you can, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, exactly. So since you do have a I wouldn't say a large family, like, maybe you don't think so, but I have 2 kids, so having 4, like, seems like a lot, to me, but I'm just wondering, like, talk about staffing the business, like, what did you do was it just you in the beginning, or were you able to bring on some help to kinda move the business forward?
Yeah. I have always only been the only full-time employee. But I will say in consumer products, everything is quite easily outsourceable.
Mm,
My husband works for a tech startup, and in tech, you need to hire full-time developers and software engineers, and you need millions of dollars to like build something that takes years. Whereas I think in consumer products, you can invest a smaller amount for a part of someone's time with a certain expertise, whether it's packaging design or
mhm,
co-packer, whatever. And it's much easier to kind of cobble together that end product without a huge, huge commitment from a bunch of employees. So that has worked out. It is expensive, developing a
right,
consumer product. You do have to like invest in the inventory and the development of it. So that's like the flip side of that. Um, but I've found really great contractors. Like my marketing person now has been working with me for almost 2 years, and my person who helps do my Amazon account. I have a lot of different people involved. The other thing that I've really leaned in on recently, especially are interns. There are a lot of really great free intern programs out there where maybe they're looking to provide jobs for someone who might not have as many opportunities. And so it's like you can hire from this pool or some of the other programs I've seen recently are actually high schoolers that are looking to get more
oh,
work
wow,
in advance, and they're willing to work for a very nominal amount um, because they want the experience. And so that has worked out really well for me. I mean, of course, when you get someone in high school or college, they don't have a lot of expertise necessarily, but they're energetic. They get social media, they're
right.
excited to work, they want to learn. So I bet a lot of value out of that. I've probably had maybe 6 interns now over the past year on and off for a couple months over the summer or part-time while they're students, and that's been a really great way to build a business.
So I've been really hesitant to hire an intern. I'm wondering, like, if you could talk about the project that you've given one of them or a group of them that they were able to handle.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I found in the beginning, I couldn't wrap my head around something to outsource because and looking back on it, the reason was I wasn't myself organized enough. I was kind of fighting all the fires all the time, and so it felt like I can't really outsource the decision making, and so there wasn't, like, anything concrete. But within the last year, I've finally have gotten the business to a place where I have some structure with it. It's been a lot easier. So I've had a lot of great success with interns on social media, which it's sort of an obvious one, but if you think about it, it's quite discreet. You give someone a login to your TikTok and your Instagram, and you say, let's try to post 2, 3 times a week. Here's some of the content that's worked in the past, but
Mhm,
please, like, tell me, like, what do you see trending? What do you think would work? And then also within social media, I have my interns engaging with influencers. So
mm,
please spend at least an hour a day, so 5 hours a week, just on the platform, commenting, liking, whatever, different people, but also go poking around, like search for people that are experts in gut health or immunity or healthy eating, and then connect with them and send them a note. So that has been very easy. And that's also something where it really doesn't take that long for someone to ramp up, like a week. And then
Mhm.
if they need to roll off, it's pretty easy. You
Right.
have someone else take over. So that's been a really good one. Another thing that I just had an intern helping me with recently, Vitaminis is hosting an online summit. It's called Nourish and Flourish Summit, which is basically a bunch of expert speakers talking about different areas of holistic health and wellness. And that has been a great way. The intern has been a great support. I could not have done it without her
Sure.
in terms of reaching out to potential speakers, compiling the videos, organizing the emails that go out with some guidance from me. But
Mhm.
those are two examples, and then the third one is interesting because I don't think it's like maybe your typical internship, but I've had 2 interns on sampling as
Oh,
well. And
interesting.
on the one hand, I think some people look at sampling and they're like, "Oh, that's not like a professional type of project." But I really beg to differ because I have personally done 100 samplings or more at
Mhm.
this point. And it's not just like getting people to taste the product, it's perfecting the pitch,
Sure.
figuring out what resonates, taking note of what customers are walking by. Are they older? Are they younger? What's their gender? Do they have families? So it's almost like market research and marketing messaging testing.
Yep.
And so that's how I position those internships. It's like, yeah, I do want you in stores for 3, 4 hours at a time, but I want you to come back to me with feedback on the product. What are some of the comments you received? What messaging resonated? What suggestions do people have? That kind of thing.
I love that. That's such good information. Such good
It's worked
information.
so far.
Yeah.
Not everybody's up for that. I mean, I think a lot of people want to work behind a computer. They want to do the social media because they have to like hide behind their phone. And
Mhm.
sampling is a hard job to like set that up and just put yourself out there and people
Yeah.
like roll their eyes at you for 3 hours straight. But if you're up for it, I think it's a really great experience for the interns too to develop their confidence and their people skills.
Y Sure, sure. So you mentioned social media and sampling. What other things are you doing to market the business?
So sampling social, we do a lot of email. So I, for the first year of the business, was very focused on social media. I
Mhm.
think in my head, that was just what you did. And so I did a lot of organic posts, which is extremely time consuming and
Mhm.
very low yield. I do think it's necessary to some extent because people go to your social media profile, like your website, they want to see what's there, but no one is converting off social media. They're just not. Like, they're just not. And then I tried some paid and it was very expensive and honestly didn't really convert either.
Yep.
It's like, well, you got a lot of likes and comments, but nobody bought it. So after doing that for about a year, I really shifted focus to email. And it's interesting. On the one hand, email feels like this sort of antiquated technology that people should be moving away from. But on the other hand, if you think about it, on social, you're sort of like mindlessly scrolling and you might look at something for 2 seconds and move on.
Mhm.
An email, you have asked to receive some information. It's delivered to your inbox and you are looking at it for a good amount of time. Even if you don't click it, you're reading that headline. It's putting vitamins in your head. So we send a weekly email that includes blog posts, occasional promotions, information about the products. And a lot of my email collection I do through sampling now. So I have a little QR code on my table. And if maybe people aren't ready to buy right then, I say, well, drop your email and you'll get a coupon. And then you kind of get them into the information cycle of learning more until they maybe decide to buy it.
I love that because you have a person that raised their hand, like, "I'm interested in this product," and then you actually have a direct connection to them because you post on social and they may not see it for whatever
Yeah,
reason, but with email, there's a more of a chance that they're gonna, be able to kinda read your message and buy something, so that's great.
totally.
Great, great.
And the other thing is, I think I heard once in consumer, it takes, I think, 7 impressions for someone to buy. And so with email, you've got them lined up. They will get 7 notes from you,
Right,
like maybe tried you at the store. There's one, and you send them the welcome promotion coupon, and then you send them 5 more blog posts or whatever. And then you've got a system for that versus social, who knows? And then on, even sampling, it's like you might catch the same person twice, but you'd have to probably take a year to get them 7 times.
right, right. So what piece of advice may you give somebody that's just starting out?
Oh, um,
Probably so much, but
yeah, it's so funny because it's always, like I said, it's always easy to look back and like kind of think about how you could have done things better. But I think to me, the biggest hurdle is to just get started. And so I think my piece of advice would be to just break things down instead of like getting overwhelmed by like, oh, do I want to start a company? It's going to be a decade of work. It's going to take all this time and money and heartache. Like just try that one little thing. Now on the con side, you might get sucked into it. And then it's like you do want to appreciate the commitment you're making. But on the other hand, for example, with Vitaminis, interviewing friends and family about ideas, that was not a very big investment. I mean, it was some time, but it cost nothing.
Right.
That was like one step that I took in the very beginning that was very low commitment. It's like, even if I decided to do nothing with this information, I was going to chat with my friends anyway, and it did cost no time. And then kind of incrementally, as you see some ideas making sense and some things, you can always just take a little bit more of a step. So maybe it's researching some people that could help you formulate a recipe
Hmm.
or doing some recipes in your kitchen for other kinds of businesses or in a kitchen like yours, like a shared space. Like just what is that one next little tiny step that you can take? And then with each of those steps, you can ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? If it doesn't work out, that's fine. If it does, great. I found that to be like the best mindset for the early stages because it can be very overwhelming if you get too caught up in the whole thing. You almost just want to break it down into these micro steps.
No, I completely agree because then you'll look back at the micro steps a month later, and like you'll kind of see how far you've come versus like stressing out about, I don't know, getting into Whole Foods or whatever people want to do. So yeah, I think that's really great advice. So what has entrepreneurship taught you about yourself?
Oh boy, this is a crazy. I actually just posted one on LinkedIn post on this. I realized that when you're an entrepreneur, especially solo entrepreneur, you will basically have to face every single one of your personal weaknesses, every single one. And it's crazy because it makes sense. But man, when you're living through it, it is brutal. Like for me personally, I push myself very hard. And there have been many times on this journey where I've been just like exhausted, stressed, like at my breaking point, short with my kids, not sleeping, like you name it. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, it's my responsibility to figure that out, like to pace myself, to take care of myself, like the self-care, all that stuff, which has never been my strong suit, but like I had to come to grips with that. But yeah, other things like I also am a more action-oriented person. So I'm more likely to jump into doing something than I am to like analyze it 25 times. That can be a good thing, but there are other times where I've rushed into a decision, maybe around like a graphics or a packaging or something where I look back and I made a mistake and it ended up costing me time and money to redo it. And if I had
Mhm.
taken a little bit more time, I could have gotten it right, you know? So just things like that. I think you realize like when you're an entrepreneur, it's just you. And especially if it's just you and no co-founder, you can't even put your finger to your co-founder.
Not at all.
Uh, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Like if you think about like the personal growth from that and like also gaining the confidence that you can really do what you want to set your mind out to do, like whatever you are committed to doing, you can do. When you actually live that, it's so wonderful, but it can be very painful at times.
No, no, it's totally true. Like it's really fun to create something from scratch, like just to come up with this idea. And like, as you mentioned, talking to your friends, and I did some similar things and like kind of, executing on that and having a real life thing that you can sell is really great. It's,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that's
very
a good
fulfilling.
feeling. Yes, for sure. So at Hudson Kitchen, we have what we call a money bell that we ring when we want to celebrate something. So I'm wondering, what are you celebrating right
Oh, well, let's see. I thought about this. I saw your note and I don't know if it's quite ready to celebrate yet, but there's a particular large retailer that's been on my target list for since the beginning of Vitaminis, like
now?
a couple years. And I have followed up from every different angle. I'm probably coming up on 20 follow-ups at this point. Stop by the local store, drop a card, call the guy from the local store, drop a sample, text the
Hmm.
guy at the local store, make him annoyed. Hey, get him introduce me to someone else. I mean, it's like that person is the wrong person. He doesn't reply. And then, so I mean, like 20 times. And I finally just got to the corporate contact because this is a franchise business. And
Hmm.
so I have to go through corporate. But after like 20 follow-ups, I finally got the corporate contact. I sent him samples. I pinged him on LinkedIn and he replied right away and said, I look forward to seeing the samples and tasting it. And I thought,
Amazing. That's so
it's not
great.
done yet, but I literally started with just knocking on the door at the local store and I couldn't tell you how many times they have tried to reject me.
I love that you just kind of kept going and kept going because that's what it, because a lot of people don't follow up. And so like you don't get the result you want because you just didn't take that and it just took maybe a little bit longer than you had anticipated, but you finally at least got some response.
Yes.
So that's really
It's
exciting.
true. It's true. And there's this delicate balance because sometimes when things don't work out, the takeaway is like, maybe this isn't the right thing. But if you think it's the right thing, you should not let minor inconveniences or one person's opinion or for like stop you because it's right. So just getting that message to the right people, trying different ways, that's played out many, many times in this journey where I really believed that something should be the right fit. And so I just kept at it and eventually something clicked.
Amazing. So Leslie, thank you so much for being here. Let everyone know where they can find out about you and Vitaminis.
Thank you. We have a website, vitaminisbrand.com. So we are, of course, there. We are on Amazon as well. It can be tricky on Amazon. You have to search for Vitaminis Juice or Vitaminis Immune because I think the vitamin brands bid on Vitaminis. Still trying to win that search term. But we're also on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, Vitaminis Brand. So yeah, come check us out. Drop a note. There'll be me and my interns answering all the emails, social media DMs. So we'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Food Means Business podcast was produced by Hudson Kitchen. It is recorded at the studio at Kearney Point and mixed and edited by Wild Home Podcasting. Our theme song is by Damian DeSandes, and I'm your host, Janaba Johnson-Jones. Follow Hudson Kitchen on Instagram at The Hudson Kitchen, and to get food business bites right in your inbox, sign up for our newsletter at thehudsonkitchen.com/newsletter. Listen, follow, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts. Until next time.